friends. I'm Robbie Young, Vice President of Strategic Growth at CUInsight, and I'm excited for the third episode in our four-part series of the CUInsight Network podcast brought to you by TruStage. In today's discussion on the sustainable credit union growth, I am thrilled to be talking with Opal Tomashevska, Director of Multicultural Business Strategy at TruStage. Welcome to the show, Opal. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited as well.
Awesome. So many credit unions are struggling with sustainable growth, especially attracting younger, more diverse members. Based on your work at TruStage, what should credit unions be doing differently to stay relevant?
Yeah, we absolutely hear that all the time. So what we say is growth will not come from doing more of the same, but from really deeply understanding and connecting with younger consumers. And younger consumers are more racially diverse. So connecting with this population and understanding the financial realities that those consumers face, think about everything from worries to aspirations, dreams. That's going to look very different than it has from past generations. And we also think about the current times with consumers who are navigating right now higher cost, delayed milestones like home ownership, and a lot of uncertainty, while also having more financial choices than ever before, everything from banks to fintechs, digital platforms, many of these things being right at their fingertips. So lots of different choices for different populations that we're able to serve. And the credit unions who are really going to win are able to meet those members where they are. And they're the ones who design around their unique needs and build relevance with things like trust and emotional connection, using real authenticity and understanding that they're having to do this in an incredibly and increasingly crowded marketplace. So that's where our work focuses, looking through this multicultural lens at consumers. And this is how credit unions can really build long-lasting relationships. And that's where that growth is going to come from.
That's such awesome information. The sixth edition of What Matters Now research continues to expand in scope and inclusivity. What are some of the most surprising or overlooked insights about today's consumers that credit unions need to better understand?
Yeah, so each year we try to get more inclusive to gather the best data possible. And each of our editions, as you mentioned, it's the sixth edition, builds upon what we learned in the last edition and then what we've been hearing, talking to credit union partners and learning about our consumers in between. So we combine our quantitative data with our qualitative data so we can share with credit unions not only kind of the what products, services, channels people want and need, but also the why behind that and really bring that human element into our research and understand what those products and channel preferences might really provide solutions that can create a better financial future for the consumers that we serve. So when you ask about the interesting findings, there's so many, but I'll try to just share a few here. So one is really around this theme of the American dream. So it's no longer just one dream. It's not just the picket fence, the 2.5 kids. It's increasingly about financial stability now versus this future growth. And there's differences. For example, home ownership still tops the list for younger Americans, but it's less important for other generations. We also see the American dream differ across race and ethnicity. Another interesting finding that we found was around neurodivergence. So neurodivergent Americans carry the heaviest load of worry. So for the last three editions of What Matters Now, we've had this thing that we affectionately call the worry web, where we look at how worried people are about paying bills, retirement, the current cost of living, being able to take care of a parent or other loved one. And we see that across all of those, financial worry is higher for neurodivergent consumers, despite having similar incomes and even higher employment than their neurotypical counterparts. When we look through this lens of culture and generation, we also see that neurodivergent consumers are younger. So more people who identify as neurodivergent are Gen Z or millennial consumers. And this group is very diverse. So there's a lot of intersectionality within that. And we also find that neurodivergent consumers are more entrepreneurial and more likely to own a business. So there's a lot of fun things that we've been able to kind of really discover. But those are a few things that we found when adding neurodivergence into the mix for this research. And then the third kind of last thing I'll share here that was really interesting to us is this concept of the hustle economy. And we started asking this question in 2018 and continue to see growth here. So the hustle economy is no longer optional. So we found that nearly half of Americans, that's 46%, and it's up from 39% in 2022, agree with the statement that these days salary isn't enough. You have to hustle to make money in different ways. And then when we look at that specific question again through this multicultural lens, we see that this sentiment is even stronger among Black consumers, women, millennials, and other BIPOC consumers. So I know I packed a lot in there, but there's a ton of great things. But those were some of the things that we think are pretty interesting and we haven't seen elsewhere.
That's awesome. And as a neurodivergent consumer, I think that's so interesting and honestly amazing that you are including that representation in there as well, because it's certainly something that now, from my lens, it's something I look at a lot to wonder, does this data include that information? Because it does add a totally different aspect to things.
Yes. And same. I echo that. And I love to hear when people see themselves within the research, because that's our goal as well.
So true. So we know that research is so valuable, but execution is where the impact happens. How can credit unions take insights from your report and translate them into practical, everyday strategies that drive growth?
So insights to action is kind of our motto and one of our goals every year. So when we share this information with credit unions, we actually bake our action items right into the presentation. So we're out there sharing, you'll see kind of action items right on the slides, and we'll talk about them. And we base those on audiences. So we're not just giving the facts and the stats, but we present actions that credit unions can take. So when we share something like, let's say, credit unions still lead in satisfaction and trust, but fintech and money movement platforms are gaining ground, especially with younger and diverse consumers, we'll also share that credit unions need to invest in convenient and accessible options like payment platforms. When we talk about overall satisfaction holding steady, but that underserved communities report meaningful lower satisfaction with primary financial institutions, we will have a call to action that credit unions must also evolve how they serve increasingly diverse communities to meet them where they're at, and that they can't assume that what they've always done will continue to work for younger generations. If we share something like more consumers want to work with one institution, and we did see that rise from 2022 to 26, where in 2022, only 28% wanted to keep all of their finances with one institution. And in 2026, that rose to 40%. And we also share that social media and AI have a growing role in financial products and services and how they're researched. We'll give practical solutions to credit unions on how they should be looking at exploring comprehensive options to meet more needs and reach members in new ways, like social media and influencers, where we've seen a rise since 2022 in what people trust to really research financial services and products. So we pair the stats that we share with action items right away and have that baked in. And that's something we learned along the way and started to incorporate as we listened and talked to our audiences.
That's so important. I've seen a lot lately, especially when it comes to social media like TikTok and things where the younger generations are truly taking their information from there. And as that neurodivergent in person I mentioned, I also really like TikTok and the way they deliver information. So leaning into understanding how those things work is so important. And I'm sure adds so much value to what you all are doing as well.
Absolutely.
So when you look at the future of membership, which emerging consumer behaviors or expectations do you think credit unions are still underestimating?
I think one of the biggest things, and we saw prominent in this edition as well, is that credit unions may be underestimating members' willingness to go elsewhere. So while I mentioned just a few minutes ago that most want just one primary financial institution, a growing number are both adding payment services, think Apple Pay, Google Pay, and considering these payment platforms as their primary financial institution now. In addition to them thinking of it as their primary financial institution, those who are still thinking of the traditional credit unions and banks as their primary financial institution, they are starting to add and get more comfortable with those things like Apple Pay and the Google Pay that I mentioned. Another thing I think is that people are underestimating how important DEI really is to consumers and how much that matters to them in choosing a primary financial institution. They are really concerned about primary financial institutions speaking the language that they're comfortable with, having a cultural understanding, having that representation amongst staff when they go into branches or when they're looking on the website, being able to see themselves in promotion and products and services and that marketing. That's something we saw even more important in 2026 than it was in 2022. And having primary financial institutions that really understand their lifestyles, their needs, their cultural intersection with finances, and ensuring that they are truly being seen and welcomed by their credit unions and financial institutions. And the last thing I'll say is that I think sometimes we underestimate that credit union difference and how really leveraging that alongside with some of these insights on products and services and preference can really be a winning combination. So much of what credit unions are built on aligns with what we see that multicultural consumers and younger consumers and women really want and resonate with. But we just need to talk about it more. So we are often supporting causes that communities really care about, but are we letting our members know that we're doing those things? Are we letting our members know our story and really sharing that? Because with so much choice out there for consumers, that's what really is going to make that connection and have that differentiation. So I really hope that we are not underestimating that credit union difference, because I think that can make all the difference when it comes to really growing our membership with consumers.
Well, Opal, thank you so much for joining me today. I continue to be in awe of all the great work that TruStage does, especially when it comes to things like DEI. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I know our audience appreciated all your insights as well. We'll be sure to link to everything we talked about in the show notes today, but to learn more, please feel free to visit TruStage.com. And I'm looking forward to the next time we get to talk. And I will see you in about a week. And thank you to all of our listeners, and we'll see you next time.